So now I know why people have studios and they have cameramen and photographers and people double checking things, just to make sure that the mic is working, the lights are working, the camera's working, but we got things working now. So let's get down to it. I was watching today or heard the news that Tucker Carlson got fired from his big talking head job. And that guy has been annoying me since forever because he plays the populist, the populist. That's a word that is more or less meaningless. But what he does, I guess, this is, let's take the cynical way of thinking of populist. Populist is that it's someone who takes popular issues and then twists it and perhaps adds a bunch of other nonsense into it so that at the end, the populism is just a way to get views and clicks. And in fact, it's a disinformation method. And a lot of people are on this bandwagon now. So you've got left-rightist just going on and on about agitatory nonsense, agitatory groups. Look at these people doing this and and at the end, all you do is get more and more pissed off. And then they are then considered to be right. And the left has this other way of dealing with populism. And so at the end of the day, nothing comes of it. It's just one big mind rumping that leads nowhere. It's full of sound and fury and leads nowhere. That's sort of what it amounts to. Nonsense. And I didn't like the format. I didn't like anything about it. So that he finally got taken off the air, I think is probably a good thing. It's not like they're replacing people with really competent political analysis. But now that there's a war on, they seem to be taking things a little bit. Now that billions of dollars has been spent, they really do now notice that there's a lot of crap on TV. There's a lot of crap thinkers, crap posers, crap casting, crap scripts, crap lobbyists, crap everything, crap woke. So now they're starting, using populism for social division purposes is not, it's probably not like a good thing to just allow to proliferate. So again, I don't know who these execs are or companies are that are making money off of a degraded media landscape, but they do exist. I'm sure you didn't make it. You listening to this, you didn't make any money off that. I didn't make any money off that, but we got a lot of angry, misguided people out there now thanks to these people. So I guess we can be happy that there's one less convincing one, halfway convincing one, no longer on television. Of course, it was due to some type of intrigue. It was a lawsuit, which is, everyone knows lawsuits now. We got politicized courts. So then politicized technology, because of course their technology, 100%, it was defamation. It was defamation that it didn't work the way it should. The machines they have look like one-armed bandits from Vegas in like the 1980s. Of course, their technology was, a number one. And of course, to defend yourself against such a lawsuit is going to cost you $1 billion probably, because we got free courts in this land that are really interested in truth and the American way, right? So, the confluence, right? The confluence of it, because they had the guy. This is the thing. Like, if you've been watching the Russian TV channels, like the news channels, they put up Tucker Carlson, man. This was the smartest guy in all of America, man. This was the guy who really knew what was happening, because he was just, showing that all of these wokery groups that are just, complete crap, they don't have that in Russia. So, sort of like, why would we not let Putin just take over all Europe, man? I mean, why stop with Ukraine? It's just, he's got a better social plan, like 10 years for criticizing him and his cronies that haven't had a free election, like, ever. Whoa, democracy, right? So this guy gets paid millions of dollars to do that, and he's been doing it for years. And then he's put in the, oh, he's he's on the right side. He's a conservative. Conservative doesn't mean shit, man. Right doesn't mean shit. What is it? What is it? Right? What if the right done right in the U.S.? What? Trump's not a rightist. There's nobody on the right. See, here's the thing: totalitarianism does not allow a valid choice that is oppositional to them. So it's all a Karabuki circus, right? But the American version of that is a lot less direct, of course. Now, the Russian side, this is just straight up tyranny. It's absolute tyranny. And then in modern times, we got modern people shilling for it. In the West, most people who show for it are doing it for the money. Now, they won't tell you that, but we got the money culture in the West. So if you're making money, it's good. More money, double plus good. So who's the best people in the West? It must be the bankers, because they just, print the money for all of us to become so wealthy. So, if we need to do something woke, we're going to be on it with the wokeness, because, then we're going to have money and we're going to be rich, and other poor people are going to realize how backwards they are for not taking that deal. So, the West had problems. The West has problems. A lot of it has to do with morality that the West has forgotten. The East never really had it. Like, we're talking about the Golden Horde here. We're talking about Mongolian, Asian steppe culture that has just somehow made it into modern times with a bunch of proxies that they work with. Just think in terms of like Kurds and Tajiks and other groups from that area that are in it for the money and will say and do anything, and they've got a legion of these people. So that they couldn't find a couple of those in a spiritually materialist, Western, postmodern society. They certainly can. They got a lot to work with. Not just them, but also their Chinese buddies that they're in bed with. So it's not like there's any difference there. That was another thing. You got these completely brain blasted so-called Western intellectuals. Chinese, that's completely different, man. They're just two different worlds. They wouldn't cooperate. So we got that mind blasting for the last 30 years. I call it the lost last 30 years, because that's exactly what's happened. You could put people on a list that have been in any type of leadership positions in the West, and more or less, if you were to put like an AI algorithm on them, you would find boop, 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 unqualified for the job. The results speak for themselves. So, but yeah, coming back to the whole disinformation thing, I mean, that he was even considered right. So we're talking about the containerization. So this is what I've noticed. It's like a political containerization. So you have the left-right containerization. Of course, that's a very meaningful metric. It's been meaningless, I don't know, since Lyndon B. Johnson, probably even before that. Then you've got, of course, anything to do with woke is like an automatic brain blastery. And that is the point I wanted to really make, is because it's so tragic. So how do these people expand that want to take over the world? Because they absolutely do. Well, they discredit their opposition. They have declared the entire Western world, the entire Western culture, to be their opposition. We were producing better music, better films, better economic conditions than their closed systems were. So they consider culture to just be some type of military instrument. Like they couldn't figure out why their people wanted to leave for the West until they were like, well, you know what, the music's pretty darn good, the economy's pretty darn good, the culture's pretty darn good. So they're like, oh, okay. Well, how do we destroy that? How do we subvert that? How do we strangle that out? How do we ride that off the rails? That's what they did. They sat down. They had a bunch of people, army-like organization. Okay, well, we got to fund these people. We got to do this with this media company. We need this executive here. We need to buy shares in Coca-Cola. Who knows? It's been an onslaught since the 90s. And it's absolutely happened. This stuff doesn't happen by accident. Cultures do not just spontaneously set themselves on fire. So again, it's so easy to see that it's so easy to understand that totalitarians do not tolerate competition of any kind. That's how they win. You have a better restaurant, more people coming, their crappy restaurant's not working. Well, guess what? They throw a Molotov cocktail through the restaurant window and the whole place burns down. And guess what's the only place in town? It's their crappy tacos, okay? So we would never think of that. Like, let's go to Russia and mess up their music industry, mess up their film industry, mess up their culture. They did think like that because they had an existential crisis because of it. So they took it a lot more seriously, and they decided to do things that a naive Westerner would never have thought that any well-meaning person would have done. They did it. They had oil money backing them. They got more oil money than Saudi Arabia. Okay, they can pay for it. They have paid for it. So for the, again, Ukrainian victims that are looking for a West that is being attacked on a daily basis, all I can say is make sure you don't adopt wokery, because that is the anti-Western cultural program that they know they can defeat. So it's like, this is what they implanted via fifth columnists and a bunch of skunks and a whole lot of money and organization to destroy the institutions from the inside. So if you're going to go along with the woke crowd, people have been infected with this. There's a lot of people that have inverted values. We're in a post-Christian, post-modern, neo-barbaric time. So woke is more or less the cultural program for exterminationism. So if you adopt any part of that, they've got a lot of tentacles, a lot of ways you can get in, but not a lot of ways you can get out. So you've got to be able to reject wokery and yet at the same time not fall for fake opposition. Populists like Tucker Carlson that are just in it for the money, right? We've got a non-functional conservative movement. We've got a non-functional left. So we got a lot of problems, and joining woke is just another way of supporting the Russian war effort. So just consider that. Look into articles that are about anti-woke and then start putting two and two together. We don't need more naive, stupid Westerners to fall victim to wokery. So wake up. This is my first video here. I'll see how often I can get back to it. It is technologically challenging. So, but do check the links below, stay informed, and live in the future. Live in the past, but don't live here that offers you zero choice, even though there's apparently a choice, because there really isn't if you look into it a little bit further. So, but in the future there is, and in the past there is. So curate your life. What's up, YouTube? But so I didn't want to end it there. I didn't want to stop with blaming, because again, nobody could have foreseen what has happened in the last 30 years. But it's also, let's just say, if it's not proven, we can just forget it ever happened, right? It's just dust in the wind. And so we can just say that there was a time period where people did not understand each other well enough to cooperate civilizationally. And it came to a head, and some people who made some very bad decisions according to some very bad ideas made some very bad mistakes, and now they're gone. And so we can move on in the rubble. We can find our way back to a better place, certainly on an individual level, which means taking care of yourself mentally in these trying times, which also means perhaps looking into things like Dhamma, like Western Buddhism, which is to say you don't have to take it overboard into wokeism, because anything can be woked if you take it the wrong way, with the wrong ideas, with the wrong premises, the wrong foundations. So I think future generations will have to be on the lookout for that. It's now just it's a well-known thing. It's a phenomenon, so it's identifiable. But it's certainly not behind us. It's still in play, because people are in play, employing these things. Now, my recommendation is to just stop doing bad things so that you get bad things in return, which is a cycle like this. But if there are hard-headed exterminationists, then that's something that people need to then take a little bit more seriously than they have, because maybe they think that's the winning strategy, which is, again, extermination, which is, boy, that's one problem they don't have anymore. So if they've already, let's say, moved militarily on, say, upping production by, 100 times, then maybe there are people that think that's the way forward. So I think people like that, people that are into historical revisionism, they need to be taken into account. And the question is how to deal with them. I think countries in the Baltic states have some good experience in that, but again, some of them, I don't know at this point. We're looking at revisionist times, which means these authoritarians are trying to make a comeback, like worldwide, just by pretending to be democratic parties, for example. So, extremes on left and right, same basic positions paid for by global. Do we want to call them globalists? People from not from here, and then just paying money people because they can run a campaign because they have the money. Is that beyond our concept or of plausibility? So those things can get shut down. They can be identified, and then based on what comes from the other side is how one would respond. I mean, at this point, people are talking openly about nuclear exchange again, like it's just normal. So if that's the case, then again, are we talking about exterminationism, two exterminationists? Or can we sit down and have a dialogue and say, okay, you stop doing this, like de-escalating, and we stop doing this. But are we there yet? Do we have people that are that hard-headed, that ideologically and morally, let's say, versatile, that they can paint themselves as the good guys and everyone else gets dehumanized? Because I think that is ultimately what wokery is. It's a dehumanization. So, and dehumanization precedes extermination. So that's sort of the track we're on. But again, that script can be flipped. This is a volitional, strategic, tactical decisions made by people from right here, right now, or maybe from years ago, but maybe they'll just cease to be at some point, and then we can return to a cooperative, mutually beneficial type of arrangement, which is ultimately the most preferable way of interacting with other people other than yourself. So I think a lot of ill will and greed can flow into world politics, but it can also flow out if people cultivate themselves in areas that are mutually beneficial and mutually prosperous. I also think that there's a lot of opportunity here. I think that Ukraine, how about this? Ukraine, just like Poland, just like the Baltic states, each of them has a national concept, and we can do comparisons and we can come up with a new modern political architecture that could also be used in Russia. So we need to be thinking in terms of a legitimate Russian opposition, which means nobody affiliated with any type of oligarchs ever. None of them. So they need to retire. Like, get some pina coladas, buy yourself a nice little tiny house on the beach, and relax. Just don't ever get involved with Russian politics again. And that also means cultural fields, which now are more important than ever. So here is the out. This is where I can give Russians an out, because you could say, all right, there was this cultural flow that was happening in the 80s and 90s that caused this type of breakdown in your feudal society, where people were everybody was happy enough, they say, but if you look into the details, it wasn't really all that great. Which means just dump all that history. Just dump it. It's a big downer. Don't embrace it. Like, they're trying to re-embrace the history. Just dump that part. It can be rewritten by perhaps Ukrainian academicians that aren't going to butcher it. But again, it can't be rewritten in a hostile way. I think it should be a wholesome way. So how about this? Keep the wholesomeness, but stop the warringness. And perhaps, again, move towards more federation. It's possible. Maybe not. Maybe someone will say that that's completely idiotic. But those are the type of debates that are great to have in a real opposition with authentic people that are, again, not affiliated with anything of the past. The past system has been broken since, what do you want to put at it? 1925? It's been off course. So it takes a lot of humanity to just admit that. Stop doing what you were doing and embrace something modern and new and fun. Because here's the out. I promised the out. So it's very possible that your cultural subversion programs, and I'm addressing the Russians here, caused blowback into your own societies, which caused you to misinterpret that as an attack on you. But actually, it was an attack on you, but it was a secondary attack. It was started by your initial attack to destroy our culture, because Westerners are connected. So if you wreck one part, it spreads to other parts, which ends up hitting you in the face itself. So it's very possible that you misperceived warlike actions from the West that was based on blowback from your own policies. And if it wasn't your own, maybe it was your buddies that don't really want you to succeed either. That maybe they were doing it and saying that it was just coming from the natural falling apart of the rotten West, because it just like rots. It's so normal that it just decomposes and becomes hateful and a bunch of lunatics, because that's so natural, right? So, but maybe you believe that, or maybe some people believe that it was a native thing, or maybe other people lied that they were doing one thing and then saying another, and so then it was misrepresented to you. I mean, obviously it's pretty horrifying and terrible. So it's very easy that was misinterpreted, or perhaps it was deliberate, because maybe it is an exterminationist faction somewhere. So it might not be one of your own. It might be some type of coincidence. It might be something that's a little bit more complex. It was perhaps not intended. So all of that can, in a real Russian opposition, people can talk about that, and there can be common ground with the West in general, instead of some type of animosity where we're both trying to kill each other. Because I know a world where that didn't happen, at least not for a lot of normal people. It was happening at the top, but it did not permeate into life as we perceived it. And some people were, and probably are, I'm assuming, able to live somewhat dignified lives. But of course, why do we got to make so many compromises and make so many enemies amongst what are essentially a common people with common values? And yet weaponizing values and getting into the cultural war game and all of that is really not beneficial for anyone, certainly not a Westerner long term. But that is my position. I think it's good to look at all the different angles, and I really like the idea of a forward-thinking Russian opposition that wants Russia to be a legitimate member of a legitimate West. So I think it can happen. I think also a lot of Ukrainians can help in that, making that process happen, especially the ones that are legit and haven't been wokeified, because that's just a non-starter right there. That is, again, the dehumanizing effort. And if it's there, then it's already a dead end. So, but there they are trying to pitch it to you. So it's just that is a non-starter. Because again, if you fall for that strategy, they will continue to use it until, again, there are none of us left. And that means no Western Europe, no Central Europe, no US, no Westerner anywhere, no Australia, no New Zealand, nothing. So wherever Westerners doth roam, this is it. And see, this is something Russians also might not get, is they see all of us as the same. So you're going to attack us, we attack you, who wins? You know, if you're thinking long term, like the chess player that I know all of you are, at least the ones that I played chess with. So, but yeah, this YouTube is friendly. Those are my thoughts for today. Let's hope this edit does not kill me.